Hello Power fans, it's Mathonical and you're joining me for another deck tech-in series, this time on Boros Bully. This archetype was originally created by Deluxekoff to bully Delver decks, and it's since been modified to fight the current meta. So as we go through this list, we're going to be also covering the flex slots, so that way if you want to build it yourself or you're currently playing it, you've always got a few options available to you to adjust it if you expect to be facing a certain meta. So in the 1-drop slot for the creatures, we've got Sacred Cat, which is 1 white for a 1/1 with Embalm, and we got Thraben Inspector, which is 1 white for a 1/2 and investigates when it enters the battlefield. These two creatures are the backbone of your turn 1 plays. They will generate you additional value over the course of the game, and just a great beginning to the curve. In the 2-drop slot, we got Seeker of the Way, which is 1 white for a 2/2 with Prowess, and whenever you play a non-creature spell, it gains lifelink. And Squadron Hawk, 1 white for a 1/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for up to 3 cards named Squadron Hawk, reveal them, and put them in your hand. The Seeker of the Way is one of your best ways of racing other decks and getting quick wins. Squadron Hawk, on the other hand, is just solid value. It pairs very well with Rally the Peasants and Faithless Looting, which we'll get into later, by essentially generating 4 different creatures with 1 card worth of value. Of course, it will take quite a few turns generally to get out all of those creatures because it's 2 mana for each of them, but great value there. And then all the way up in the 4-drop slot, we've got Guardian the Guildpact currently, which is 3 white for a 2/3 with protection from monocolored. With the current meta, I like this to be able to steal Monarch from other players. It's a good mirror breaker, as well as a solid creature for blocking Gurmag Angler, which has been around quite a lot lately. Alternatively, in this slot, you could be playing Palace Sentinels if you want to give yourself the Monarch and draw additional cards. That choice is entirely yours, and you can always do a 1/1 split. You can really go however you want there. Those are the creatures in the main deck, so now we're going to jump over to the spells. Taking a look at our removal package, in the 1-drop slot we have Firebolt, Lightning Bolt, and Seal of Fire. They all cost 1 red. Firebolt will deal 2 damage to any target, flashback for 4 and a red. Lightning Bolt does 3 damage to any target, and Seal of Fire does 2 damage to any target. These are all fairly interchangeable, but they do have different specific use cases. So feel free to move the numbers around. And another card to consider in this slot is Lightning Axe, which will deal 5 damage to any target, but you have to discard a card or pay an additional 5. Firebolt is more useful if you want to get more 2-for-1s. It's great against mono blue Delver and other decks that it might just be a bit of a grind where all the creatures are going to be 2 or less toughness. Lightning Bolt is really good if you need that instant speed effect to deal with something on your opponent's turn or in response to something, or the extra point of damage against like Skyfisher. Seal of Fire is good against Tribe and blue-black Delver, where you don't want your spell to get countered when you need to be able to do that damage. You may be wondering why you want it in the blue-black Delver matchup. It's because they've got Echoing Decay and will try to remove all of your tokens or Squadron Hawks all at once, and you can use the Seal of Fire to uncounterably destroy the creature that they were trying to target, saving the rest of your creatures. In the 2-drop slot, we got Journey to Nowhere, which is 1 white. When it enters the battlefield, exile target creature, and when it leaves the battlefield, return the exiled creature to the battlefield under its owner's control. This is an amazing card. It is the best white removal spell. It gets rid of Gurmag Angler, Stormbound Geist, tons of problematic permanents. You don't have to worry about what it is. This will essentially get rid of it. The only matchup you don't want to see this is against Hexproof. There's not really much I'd switch that for. Generally, I would keep all 4. But if you feel like switching 1 out for like an Oblivion Ring, no one would fault you for that. Next, we'll move over to the Faithless Looting, which is 1 red for draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, flashback for 2 and a red. This is the cornerstone of the deck. It allows us to get a lot of card velocity just going through all the cards in our deck. Discarding is not a disadvantage here, since we do have a lot of cards that will generate additional value from the graveyard, and it's really just more important to find the cards we need and continue that velocity. We've also got Prismatic Strands, which is 2 and a white. This is one of the cards that will synergize really well with Faithless Looting, because it will prevent all damage that source of the color of your choice would deal this turn, and it's got flashback, tap an untapped white creature you control. This is one of the rare cases where the card costs less out of the graveyard than it does in your hand. It's essentially a free spell when it's in your graveyard, which is fantastic and allows you to cast additional spells per turn than you normally would. We've also got Rally the Peasants, which is 2 and a white. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn, flashback for 2 and a red. This is the main win condition in the deck. It will combo with either Squadron Hawk or Battle Screech, which we'll get to next. If you use both sides of it on 1 turn, it'll give you +4/+0 and can win many games on the spot. Just be sure to play around opposing Prismatic Strands in the mirror or against Boros Monarch. Lastly, we've got Battle Screech, 2 and 2 white. Create 2 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying, and tap 3 untap white creatures you control to flash it back. 1 card, 4 1/1 flyers. That's a bit of the theme in the deck. It allows you to generate a ton of value, so you can always either use them for trades, jump blocks, racing, combo with Rally the Peasants, just so many things you can do with this card. And at worst, you can always discard Faithless Looting to get the other side of it back for free, just tapping a bunch of white creatures. That covers the entire deck. It is a fantastic list, and of course it still has some flexibility. Quickly go over the lands. We've got Wind-Scarred Crag and Boros Garrison for our dual lands. Wind-Scarred Crag will of course enter tapped and gain us a life. Boros Garrison will enter tapped, returning a land to our hand, and it will tap for 2 mana, one of each color, white and red. We've got 5 plains, 5 mountains, and then we've got a bit of a flex for what's left. Currently I'm running 1 Radiant Fountain, which when it enters gains 2 life, but it is colorless, so maybe it might hurt our mana a little bit. We've got Evolving Wilds, which you can sacrifice it to search your deck for a basic land card, and it enters the battlefield tapped. This is just a good way of fixing your mana. You could always have Terramorphic Expanse here. You could have it in Ash Barrens. The reason to have Evolving Wilds over Ash Barrens is so that way you can keep a 1-land hand with Faithless Looting more often, because quite often Faithless Looting will dig you down to a second land, although it really depends on the context of your hand. And lastly, we've got 1 Ash Barrens. You can play it to add 1 colorless, or you can basic land cycle it for 1 to discard it and find a basic land. Another just good way of getting your mana fixing online, except this one also allows it to be played without having to search if you ever needed to get up that one last bit of mana to play one of your expensive spells like a Battle Screech or flashing back both sides of a Rally the Peasants. That covers the main deck. Now let's jump over the sideboard. Starting off with the red sideboard cards, we've got Electrickery, Pyroblast, and Flaring Pain. Electrickery is 1 red for deal 1 damage to target creature you don't control, or alternatively, you can cast it for 1 red by overloading it so that it will deal 1 damage to each creature you don't control. We're going to be bringing this in for the Boros Bully Mirror, as well as against Hexproof, Mono Blue Delver, and Elves. They will have some ways of getting around this, but generally you can find a spot to get Electrickery off, although sometimes you will have to wait until you've got 2 of them in hand, which is why we're playing the full 4. Pyroblast is 1 red, and you can choose one of either countering target spell if it's blue, or destroying target permanent if it's blue. Blue is very prevalent in the Pauper format because it is a very strong color to be playing. Pyroblast is the perfect sideboard option to just kind of answer whatever they're doing, so we can win the game instead. We've got 2 Flaring Pains, which is 1 red. It's an instant that says, damage can't be prevented this turn. Flashback for 1 red. A lot of decks will be trying to stop us from winning with Rally the Peasants, or from destroying their creatures with the likes of Electrickery. Flaring Pain will allow us to stop them from stopping us. Simple as that. Also has great synergy with Faithless Looting, since we can cast it out of the graveyard. For the white sideboard cards, we've got Standard Bearer, Leave No Trace, Hallow, and Charge. Standard Bearer is 1 white for a 1/1 creature that, in that block of text, it essentially says, whenever your opponent casts a spell that targets something, they must target Standard Bearer if they can. That is going to be very useful against Hexproof, making them have to put their enchantments on Standard Bearer instead, against Tribes, so that way they can't get their combo off, and also against Burn, because they have to target this before targeting your face. Or I also like to use this to protect a Seeker of the Way, so that way they have to target this instead of killing our creature that's going to gain us some life. Just a fantastic creature. It is a little fragile, but it is just absolutely amazing to have this. Next up is Leave No Trace. For 1 white, we are going to be able to destroy target enchantment and each other enchantment that shares a color with it. Primarily this is in for Hexproof, since Hexproof has been around a lot. Of course, we can always bring in one of these against Burn if we know that they are playing their enchantment that slowly pings us down, as well as against Pestilence decks to stop them from continually keeping that Pestilence out to get rid of all of our creatures. We may want to go down to just 1 of these if Hexproof starts to die down, but for now we're going to keep it at 2. And then we've got Hallow and Charge. Both of these are going to fit the slot of protecting our creatures from Electrickery. Hallow does that by paying 1 white, prevents all damage that target spell would deal this turn, and gain life equal to damage prevented this way. Great against Burn, great against Electrickery, helps us in winning situations, can protect our creatures, just great for all those things. And Charge is 1 white for creatures you control, gain +1/+1 until end of turn. This has the alternative side of being able to help us win the game, as well as protecting us against Shrivel or Nausea. Both of these cards are a bit interchangeable, and some people are playing Lumathread Field instead as a way of protecting our creatures against opposing Electrickeries. So of course, just pick whatever you feel is best and go with that. So that's the end of the deck tech. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section down below and I'll be happy to answer that. And without further ado, we're going to jump on over to the series. I will see you there.